Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into a genuinely fascinating shift happening right now in the Philippine correctional system. We are tracking a massive transformation from a system historically rooted in punitive isolation straight into a dynamic framework that is focused entirely on community-based healing and reintegration. It is an exciting journey that completely redefines what it actually means to serve justice. Let's get into it.
Here is our quick roadmap for today. We'll start with a look at the new approach to justice, move on to the power of clemency, understand adult probation, and then dig into the actual rules. What happens if you violate those terms, and finally, the path to freedom.
All right, starting off with Section 1, a new approach to justice.
So picture the old system. For a long time, dealing with offenders was almost entirely about locking them up, incarceration. And that often just led to severe alienation and massive stigmatization. But today, we're seeing a massive pivot. The whole approach has really shifted toward a social development framework. We're finally recognizing that a truly humane justice system works best when we rehabilitate people within their own communities. Instead of just stunting someone's growth and breeding all this mistrust behind bars, this modern framework is all about community-based reintegration.
And right at the heart of this massive shift is this concept, restorative justice. This is literally the beating heart of the modern system. It's a highly victim-centered response. Instead of just punishing the offender, all the stakeholders, the victim, the offender, and the community, sit down to collectively figure out the aftermath of an offense. The main goal moves away from pure payback. It's about actively facilitating the healing of broken relationships so everyone involved gets a genuine chance to move forward with their lives.
So how does the administration actually pull this off? Well, they use a harmonized treatment program built on three main pillars. First up is the Therapeutic Community Modality. Think of this as a highly structured, self-help model that focuses on behavior management and just learning how to live right. Second, we have those restorative justice principles we literally just talked about. And third, volunteer probation aides, or VPAs. These are actual, upstanding citizens from the offender's own neighborhood who volunteer to help supervise them. This is an absolute game changer, right? Because combining self-help, restorative healing, and active citizen volunteers creates this super resilient system. The community is literally helping to heal its own.
Moving right along to Section 2, the power of clemency.
Okay, let's talk about executive clemency. Basically, this is an act of leniency or mercy, and it's a massive, non-delegable power held exclusively by the president. Now, there are four main types, and people confuse these all the time. First, commutation. This simply reduces the length of a sentence. Then there's a pardon, which is an act of grace that totally extinguishes criminal liability. This can be conditional, meaning you have to follow specific rules, or absolute, which just completely wipes the slate clean. Then we've got amnesty. This is much broader, usually granted to political offenders, and unlike the others, it actually requires the sign-off of a majority of Congress. And finally, a reprieve, which is basically a temporary pause on a final execution.
Now, here's the catch you absolutely need to remember. Executive clemency is a privilege, it is not a right. Let's look at commutation, for example. An inmate has to meet some seriously strict minimum time requirements before anyone will even glance at their petition. They have to serve at least 1/3 of their definite aggregate minimum term. If they're serving life imprisonment, they've got to serve at least 10 years first. And for heinous crimes, no way. That minimum jumps all the way up to 15 years. The system is incredibly firm on this. You have to serve a significant chunk of your time before mercy is even put on the table.
All right, that brings us to Section 3, Understanding Adult Probation.
Under Presidential Decree 968, probation is basically a setup where a convicted defendant is released, but they're subject to very specific conditions and strict supervision by a probation officer. The really crucial point here, getting probation effectively pauses the execution of the prison sentence. It's essentially the justice system stepping in and saying, look, your conviction stands, but we are giving you a shot to reform right here in your own community instead of locking you in a cell.
But getting probation? It is definitely not automatic. It follows this highly structured, rapid-fire timeline. Day 1, the court orders a post-sentence investigation, or PSI. Then, the clock is ticking. The probation office gets a strict 60-day deadline to do a massive background check, interview the applicant, and hand in a comprehensive report. Finally, by day 75, which is exactly 15 days after getting that report, the court absolutely must officially resolve the application. This tight turnaround is so crucial. It stops suspects from just languishing in legal limbo, and it keeps the wheels of justice turning efficiently to figure out if the person is truly a good fit for community rehabilitation.
Let's flip over to Section 4,
The rules of probation. Now, how long are you actually on probation? Well, what's really interesting here is that the length of your original prison sentence directly dictates your maximum probation time. If a defendant was sentenced to 1 year or less, their probation is capped at a maximum of 2 years. But if the sentence was for more than a year, the maximum probation period jumps up to 6 years. The whole idea is just to make sure the time you spend under supervision makes sense compared to your original penalty. And let me tell you, that supervision comes with some seriously rigid everyday rules. Imagine you just got probation. You've got a tiny 72-hour window to report to your probation officer for your initial supervision. That is fast. You're also required to pursue indemnification. That's a formal way of saying you have to pay your civil liability back to the victim. It directly forces you to take financial responsibility for the harm you caused. Even your physical movement is heavily tracked. Want to travel outside your jurisdiction for more than 10 days? You need the chief probation officer's approval. Gone for more than a month? You actually have to get formal approval from the trial court itself. It's really no joke.
Which naturally leads us right into Section 5, violating the terms.
So, what happens if you don't follow these strict rules? It triggers a very serious legal chain reaction. You see, while probation is a statutory right once it's been granted, it absolutely can and will be revoked if you mess up. It's literally that ultimate "I've made a huge mistake" realization. For what the courts call an absconding probationer, meaning someone who just fails to report or disappears completely, ignoring these court-mandated conditions isn't just an oops, it is a critical, devastating violation that actively jeopardizes the freedom they fought so hard to get.
When the system suspects a violation, things move incredibly fast. First, the probation officer jumps into an immediate fact-finding investigation. Next, they submit a formal violation report to the trial court, outlining exactly what the person did. If the court looks at it and decides it's serious, boom, they issue a warrant of arrest and hold a quick summary hearing. The final step is incredibly severe. The court can completely revoke the probation. And if that happens, the probationer goes straight back to prison to serve their original sentence. And get this, all that time they already spent out on probation, it doesn't even count towards their penalty. They start entirely from scratch.
Finally, let's look at Section 6, the path to freedom.
It's not all doom and gloom, though. For those who show genuine rehabilitation, who follow absolutely every rule and really work on themselves, the system offers the ultimate, highly coveted prize, early termination.
But getting early termination is a massive achievement, and they definitely don't just hand it out lightly. First off, you must have served at least 1/3 of your probation period, with an absolute minimum of 6 months no matter what. You need a completely flawless record of compliance, real, documented growth in your self-discipline, and you have to have paid off every single cent of your civil liabilities. Usually, the court grants this huge milestone to model probationers who clearly don't need supervision anymore and who have a pressing life event coming up, like securing a job contract overseas, winning an academic scholarship, or even getting elected to public office.
Whether you earn early termination or just successfully finish out your full term, the whole process culminates in one amazing legal order, a final discharge. This is huge. It doesn't just stop the check-ins, it has an immediate and profound impact. It automatically restores every single civil right that you lost or had suspended when you were convicted, and it completely wipes out liability for any fines. In the eyes of the law, a person who gets an absolute pardon or a final discharge is basically a born-again member of society. Your slate is legally wiped completely clean.
Which brings us to a final, pretty provocative thought I want to leave you with today. If the ultimate goal of justice is actually to build a safer, more cohesive society, is true restoration really found locked away behind bars, or is it found right there within the community? Looking at the evolution of this correctional system, it strongly suggests that actively healing relationships and guiding reintegration might just be the most powerful tool we have, way more than just punishing people in isolation. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.